Okay, resume 5 is, I said, is a big step, and you of course are going to be adding the changes and corrections that I suggested earlier. Structure, you're going to use your resume for structure. I suggest you just duplicate it. I like the idea of you keeping the a copy of the old project folder and then just copying the whole thing and calling it resume 5. That way, if you ever need to go back, you can. Hey, and I hope you are backing up your stuff either on a safe hard drive, or if you're working off the hard drive of a laptop, maybe back it up on a flash drive or something, just in case something goes wrong. Okay, so I suggest you duplicate the entire project folder and rename it resume 5. All right, and then you could within that you could rename the root folder resume 5 in your name. Okay, good, just as we normally say. And yes, you probably should rename the resume folder resume 5, or actually I'm suggesting now, I guess. Yeah, I'm suggesting now we just name it resume. We're getting to the point where we're going to be leaving these numbers behind, because resume 5 and then next stage is going to be you have it all done. So you might as well just call it resume at this point. Okay, so you could rename it. But the renaming isn't that important, because you're probably going to be chopping it up and making new files. Well, you are going to be chopping it up and making new files anyway. A note here that asks, are your files up to date? That's a critical thing, right? Please make sure you've made the changes to HTML and CSS and additions and so on and so forth. Remember, if you don't make the suggested changes or address the questions or problems, that could be a serious deduction. But you can always jump ahead into a stage, like jump into resume 5 without having yet received the feedback from me, and then make the changes as you go. Okay, of the many things we're going to do here, it's going to be adding links, adding colors, and converting your 2-page site into 3 pages or more. Okay, let's talk about the last part first. Converting your 2-page site, right now you have an index and a resume file, right, into 3 pages or more. So in other words, it's going to be splitting the resume. And I think is much more likely you will split your resume into 3 pages, which means then you'll have the index and then 3 pages of resume. Maybe 2, probably 3. How are you going to split it up? Well, or let's first look at the question and say, well, where are the splits going to be? And how are you going to do it? Here's some examples. Okay, it's going to be different from each of you to some degree. Well, you won't all do this the same way. It kind of depends on how much content you've accumulated and in which categories. You'd like to have relatively equal amounts on each page, right? And not necessarily a huge amount on any one page, because you're going to be adding some photos. And maybe you still have some more content to add to, right? So an easy split, of course, would be for many people just taking education and making it 1 page, and taking employment and making it another page. Okay, that's a natural split. With education, you probably put college activities and maybe even internships, but maybe internships would go on with employment. Community service and hobbies, they probably get thrown into one or the other, probably employment. They don't fit that naturally there, but that's okay. So maybe you'd have 1 page called, I like the idea of naming the pages what they are. Okay, I like the idea of having education.html and then maybe an employment.html or jobs.html, something like that. The exact name is not that important, or experience.html. The exact name is not that important, but it should be a name that makes sense. Okay, and of course you have to use the naming rules too. So you might do that kind of page, but maybe you'll do something called experience and something called about, in which case education and employment might go together, and then volunteerism and skills and hobbies and everything will go into the other page. More likely you do some kind of a 3-way split involving these things, which would be like what? Like maybe an about page, which has hobbies and skills and stuff, and maybe volunteerism and maybe something else, awards or something, and then maybe a work page and maybe an education page, or maybe some other combination. It's going to depend on what you have and what feels like it goes naturally together. One really critical thing, and a commonly made mistake, is realizing that that each of these pages has to have its own title and its own H1. And the fact that each one needs its own H1, it needs to be a specific one for this page and this topic, means you may have to do some reworking in your headings a little bit. What do I mean? Well, here in this example here, let's say you have a resume page, which I guess I would call it, probably be better to call this a maybe an education page, right? Education. Okay. So originally in your resume, you would have had, it just said your name on the top, right? And for the H1. But now we want to say your name and the topic. It probably would be, the topic would be education. So the H1 is going to be your name and the topic. But you probably already had an H2, which was called, which actually was the word education. So maybe now you're make your H2 into college experience or something. So you still need an H1 and you still need a title. Do remember there's a difference between title and H1, right? Title should include your name and every topic on the page. In fact, your title can include a lot of words. Okay, but your H1 needs to be kept kind of short because you don't want to break it down on a second line or something. So it's usually your name and then 1 or 2 words or something. Okay. So do keep in mind this interplay between title and H1, that each page needs one. And one reason I say this also is that what is the procedure you're going to use to split things up? Well, you could just take your resume and copy it 3 times, naming it first, about and experience and education or something, and then go through and remove the stuff you don't want on each of the pages. You have to stay organized to do that, right? Or you could make 3 new blank pages and just go from your resume and copy and paste the pieces out into each one. But whatever happens, you have to rework the title in the H1 and maybe the H2s also, depending on how the wording of those went, so you don't have that kind of duplication. Okay, having looked at this, I'm going to now move to, instead of going down through the rest of this right now, I want to move to Moodle and look at the sample resumes from past semesters, okay? And let's look at how some other people split their resumes up. Again, we'll look at Li Ching, who I like very much. But remember, we're not talking about this page now. We're not talking about the home page, which was a cover letter page. She's got an education page, experience page, and about me page, which are very common split. We're not looking at the gallery yet, and some people call it gallery or samples or different things like that. That's yet to come. That's going to be where you put examples of your work or things you've made or stuff like that. So what has she got in education? Well, here she's got an H1, which is her name and the word education. This is where she put her objective. Now, some people put the objective on every page, but many people just put the objective on what is considered like the first page or the main page. That's frequently education, but it doesn't have to be. It's the page you consider it's first after home in your navigation, and it's probably the most important page for you. So then she put education again, and I guess there's a little advantage to putting objective here because you can kind of get away with using the word education again, but there is a bit of repetition there, and this probably would have been better called, since it's just college, it would have been better called maybe college experience or something like that, so she didn't repeat the word. Then she has her colleges listed. And of course with a course list for one of them, and she could have a course list for the other one also. And she could have had a high school here, and she could have put other college-related things here, like college activities, so on. I'm not sure she had any. Experience, of course, was jobs, and now she's got this. She calls this experience here, but employment here. And that makes sense. Okay. But then she put volunteerism and community service here too, because she thought it kind of went with experience, and that would be fine. All right, and do realize that this is the H1, okay, but this is not the title of the page, right? This is not the title of the page. The title of the page sometimes is very similar, okay, but it should not be identical. There should be, this title on this page should be both the word experience and the word employment and volunteerism and community service. So every topic on the page should be in the title. Okay, good. And what has she got about me? She's got skills. Okay, good. And she's got awards, honors, and accomplishments, and interests and hobbies. Okay. Okay, let's look at somebody else. And I think I'm going to have to go back and use that link again. Yeah, I don't have to go back to all those. Let's look at Asia's. Okay, she had education, employment, volunteerism, and about me. So she took her resume and she split it up into 4 parts. And they are pretty simple in some ways. She did the same thing with objective here, education. Here's something a little different. Because she used this art-based essentially H1. She only used her name as H1. I think it would have been better if there had been a unique one for each page with the topic listed there too, but she got away with it that way. So of course she's got her colleges, and she put her awards and achievements here on this page because they related to education. That makes sense. So she's got 2 colleges and another thing too. Employment, she's put all of her jobs in here, right? There's not that many, but there's a few jobs. And then volunteerism, she made a special one because she had a lot of volunteerism stuff. Okay, and about me, that's where she put skills. You could see skills, though, could go in experience or employment or something else too. All right, and then she put interest in hobbies, but she did quite a good listing on those too. So that is, you can look through, I'll leave you to look through the rest of those and see how other people broke things up. So you please think about how you want to split yours up too. The only other consideration is you want at least each one of these pages to have a piece of art, and probably more than one piece of art on some of them. So you wouldn't want to split up your content in such a way that all the art was on one page and there was none on another. So think about what art you have too. Okay, let's continue then. Finally, here it is. So let's go on. Also, at this same time, before or after you do the split, doesn't really matter. I want you to add links to your page. What do I mean? These are absolute links to real things on the internet. This doesn't so much require much rewriting, although there might be some. So you surely mention, as it says here, SUNY Plattsburgh. You probably mention other institutions or publications or clubs, or in fact you do. I know you do. Organizations and so on. Everything from places where you volunteered to jobs you had. In every case, there should be an absolute or external link of that text to the website for that thing. And of course, almost everything has a website. Every club, every job, every company, every internship, so on. Almost everything has a website. So we expect almost everything to be linked. But do remember, you only link to it once on each page. So that's the reason. One reason you might want to do this after you do the split is because, yes, SUNY Plattsburgh, you'll link to it in the education page, but then maybe you put some other volunteerism at SUNY Plattsburgh or something someplace else, and maybe you mention SUNY Plattsburgh again, but it's on a different page. So traditionally it's the first time you mention it, but that means the first time you mention it in regular text. Okay, so that's in a paragraph or a list item or a DD. We do not do links in headings. So don't make links in headings. Your headings already have a lot to do. They may already carry some other color. They're bigger. You don't want them to have to be links. Okay, so this is a good time now also to see how your link styling is going to be working, because you're going to be adding that too. So there might be some rewriting necessary too. Let's say you mentioned SUNY Plattsburgh someplace in a heading, and then you kind of didn't actually say those words in the paragraph that followed. You just said the college or something. Now you have to do rewriting because you need the words SUNY Plattsburgh in that paragraph to make the link, as an example. Okay, so read through that area to be a bit more detail. In each case, when I do these, remember when I do these videos, you should still look through the assignment sheets carefully on your own. So I want you to add contact information to each page. At the bottom of every page, add a paragraph that reads something like contact me, and then email and phone. Of course, you should use your own email and phone number to create the links. If for any reason you don't want to use your own phone number or something, that's okay. The information will go just above the HR copyright, but it should be on the bottom of every page. So I haven't talked much about the copyright, but you've probably gotten feedback from me on that. And it was mentioned in the earlier stages of the resume. There should be an HR and a copyright line down there. Now, just above that is where the contact information will go. at the very bottom of every page. So every page has contact information. Every page has a copyright at the bottom. And then colors. You created and tried out a number of color schemes. It's time to apply a color scheme to your growing site. Of course, you're doing this in the single CSS file that's controlling it all. You might use one quite like, or exactly like even, they used in the color exercise 2.3. On the other hand, chances are, though, it will have less color and be more subtle. I encourage that. And maybe you'll just use what you learned there to make your color scheme. So you do need a color scheme, which means you need to have all your links styled. So you need a full link styling treatment, okay? Which we've gone over in a couple of times, and it's been in presentations, and you should have practiced by now. Margins, way back when I showed you margins, hopefully you already put them in, but at this point, at least, if you haven't already, they're required. Samples page, well, again, you don't have to create it yet, but you really should start gathering stuff together and imagining what you're going to show on a samples page. It's going to be different for everybody. It might be photography, writing stuff you have published, or classwork. It might be audio and video, stuff that's on YouTube or something. It might be posters you made. It might be some software that you wrote. It might be, as I said, it might be classwork. It might be internship work. It might be just other hobby kind of stuff. I've had people show photos that they shot from trips, like study abroad or something, on and on. For some of you, it'll be really easy and obvious what you use in the samples page. You know, you've got these articles that you published in Cardinal Points, and this photography that you did in a class, and this other stuff too. And we're going to show all those up, and then maybe you even make them into a gallery. So there's mini images. You click on them, and you go in other places, and so on. Great. For others of you, it's going to be harder because maybe you haven't made that much, but I'm sure you can brainstorm and come up with some things. And this is an example of a place where I'm willing to help you with anything, but maybe you need to talk with me and we need to do some brainstorming together to start coming up with the things for your samples page. And the photo, again, I've been warning you all along, get photos, get photos. I say it again, very soon now. Essentially, it's the final stage of your resume. You're going to be adding photos. Okay, what follows is Resume 5 will be Resume Final, your final project. Over the next few weeks, you'll be adding photos, navigation, and layout. Yes, you will. So a lot going on here. Good luck with it all, and please talk with me as you are doing it.